If you confirm that there are red flags during your due diligence, it means there's a greater potential for risks or adverse impacts to occur in your supply chain. In that case, you need to conduct a further risk assessment to understand if those risks or impacts actually exist. If so, take steps to mitigate them. You'll also have to report more information in your annual report, since you're engaging in more due diligence activities. That assures your customers, investors, and regulators that you're addressing the risks in a timely manner. Here we'll show you the process for further assessing the risks and mitigating any that you find, and then how to report further on those activities. In your risk assessment, gather more information about your source and review it to see if there really are severe risks. Define a process to obtain accurate, sufficient, reliable information. What kind of information do you need? That depends on whether the confirmed red flags are supplier red flags or material red flags. If there are supplier red flags, look at these areas: participation in international frameworks, policies and procedures for risks, evidence of implementation, due diligence reporting practices, disclosure of ownership, disclosure of payments, commitment to EITI principles. If there are material red flags, look at these areas: location of material origin, mine and transportation routes, processing locations and suppliers, quality of local governance, potential presence of human rights issues, potential of armed conflict, disclosure of payments to governments, access points, security forces, or armed groups, export, import, and re-export documentation. Standards like the Joint Standard define the type of information to collect and review, but evaluate for yourself if it's enough. The goal is to assess for risks, not just to check a box. How can you get the information to identify if there really are significant risks? There are 3 ways: supplier engagement, desk-based research, and on-the-ground assessments. First, you could engage with your suppliers. For instance, you could send supplier questionnaires to fill out. Suppliers should know about your process and agree to it before you enter a business relationship with them. Tell them that if you confirm a red flag, you'll ask them for more information. Put these expectations in written agreements with the supplier. Next, you could conduct desk-based research. Research publicly available information. Look at company websites, sustainability reports, and pledges to international frameworks. Gather information through industry associations or subscriptions to due diligence tools. Make sure your sources are credible. Finally, if supplier responses and research don't provide enough credible information to conclude there are no Annex II risks, you'll need to conduct an on-the-ground assessment. You could conduct the assessment by yourself, as part of a group, or through an independent third-party assurance program. Make sure the team is competent to conduct it. They should have the necessary knowledge, understanding, and expertise about the situation. As part of the on-the-ground assessment, make a plan for stakeholder engagement. Gather perspectives from different stakeholders and sources. Assess for all the risks in Annex II, even if your initial assessment didn't find those risks. Then systematically review the information to determine whether there actually are major risks in your supply chain. The assessment will tell you either that there are actual risks or impacts, or that there are not actual risks. If there are risks or impacts, you need to report it to senior management and conduct risk mitigation. The potential for risk changes over time, so monitor your supply chain at regular intervals. If, during your risk assessment, you find that there are actual risks or impacts, you're responsible to respond to those risks and impacts. You'll need to design a strategy and a plan for risk management, implement the plan, and then monitor your progress. Start by designing a strategy to respond to the risks or impacts you identified. The first question is, should you keep doing business with the supplier while the plan is being implemented, or should you pause or stop it? The answer depends on the severity of the risk or impact. A severe case would involve serious human rights abuse or supporting non-state armed groups. If there are risks of adverse impact or actual adverse impact, you must disengage while a corrective action plan is implemented. What if the risk or impact was less severe? Any other risk from Annex 2? In that case, the choice is up to you. You could continue your relationship while the supplier implements their corrective actions, or you could choose to suspend the relationship till the supplier completes the corrective actions. Put your strategy into a risk management plan. Develop the plan with suppliers and other stakeholders. Define clear indicators showing how you will measure progress. Give suppliers timelines for implementing their responsibilities in the plan, and tell them the repercussions for failing to do so. Then, implement your risk management plan. To implement it successfully, engage with suppliers and stakeholders. Include any stakeholders who are affected, local authorities, and civil society. Use your influence through business associations, multi-stakeholder initiatives, and engage with the local government. Ensure a clear process is in place. It should define who is responsible for what and who is accountable. To be acceptable, the plan should lead to significant improvements. Evaluate your risk management plan to be sure it fits the risks you identified. Develop clear timelines, measures of progress, and escalation actions. Monitor and evaluate progress in implementing the risk management plan. Track its effectiveness by monitoring key indicators. And gather feedback from affected stakeholders. Ensure that the plan is consistently implemented in accordance with the strategy. Compare progress against indicators and timelines and adapt the plan as needed. Ask yourself if significant, measurable progress is being made. If progress is being made within 6 months, you could just keep monitoring the supplier's mitigation progress. If progress is made but taking longer, consider adapting the timeline, like extending it another 3 months. If there's no progress, consider disengaging and finding a new source or approach. Even when implementation is considered complete, you should still monitor for adverse impacts occurring. Finally, you need to report your progress to stakeholders and the public. In a previous course, we showed you the elements to include. But if you've had confirmed red flags, there are additional elements to report. You should include the results of your risk assessment and your methodology. Then report on your risk management plans and actions. Show how you monitored and evaluated progress in implementing them. And finally, present the progress and outcomes in managing the risks. As a review, if you confirm red flags with your suppliers or material, there's a potential for serious risks or adverse impacts. So you'd need to conduct a further risk assessment to find out if those risks or impacts actually exist, and then respond to what you find. Gather more information about your supplier or material as defined in the joint standard. Have suppliers answer questionnaires and put information sharing requirements in contracts. Conduct desk-based research. Then conduct an on-the-ground assessment, alone or in partnership, using a competent assessment team. Engage with all relevant stakeholders. Review the information you gather to find out if there are major risks or adverse impacts present in your supply chain. If so, take steps to mitigate them. Design a strategy to respond to the risks or impacts. Based on the type of risks, decide whether to continue business during mitigation. Then implement your risk management plan. Engage with relevant stakeholders and hold suppliers accountable for improvements. Monitor key indicators and gather stakeholder feedback to see if significant, measurable progress is being made, and adjust plans accordingly. Finally, report on your risk assessment and management progress. That assures customers, investors, and regulators that you're managing risks and sourcing responsibly.